Onyejekwe, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you today. You have a unique and interesting background with a lot of expertise in the startup space, so it'll be a fun conversation. We're going to be focusing on how you go about finding co-founders, and then how do you go about the process of managing performance, which will include the hiring and firing and other elements related to that in terms of how we manage our team. And I think especially when we're talking about a founding team and that circle of people, that core group that's going to hopefully drive the success of the organization, it's really, really important to get the right people into the team and working together in really effective ways. So that's what we'll be focusing our conversation on today. As we get started, I just wanted to share Obi's bio with everybody. Obi Onyejekwe is an entrepreneur and product specialist with extensive experience building digital and entertainment companies. He has raised over $900,000 on revolutionary startup Neato Inc., which was acquired by AOL. Obi is an outstanding leader with a record of spearheading the development of high-end profitable products and is a startup founder with experience raising capital and building qualified teams. And I could go on and on. There's so many great qualifications that you bring to the table. But again, thank you for joining me. Is there anything else you would like to add by way of background or personal context for the listeners before we dive on in?
Yeah, I'm currently the CEO of Unami, which is a startup for software for animators and video game developers. So we're solving a major pain point in that industry. Also work with or COO of Pixel Studio, which is an animation studio here in Los Angeles. So yeah, the two pretty much complement each other.
Yeah, that's really great. And you are a busy man doing many really cool things. So that's really awesome. And maybe start by just telling listeners a little bit more about how you found yourself getting into, this founder space, being willing to, it's not for everybody, right? It's not for the faint of heart. So how did you find yourself getting into that space?
I would say basically, I think towards the end of me working over at Nickelodeon, I came up with the idea of Neato, which was a facial recognition software similar to what you see in Snapchat. So when I decided, to take the big leap, start developing the software, build a team, I did intense research on the software and the code needed and the team that I needed to build, and then assembled a team and pretty much built it and went from there. I think for me, I've always had the entrepreneur's spirit, and I saw the opportunity and I was like, okay, now's the time. It's like now or never, pretty much. And I even remember kind of sabotaging interviews that I went on because I knew if I got this job and I was going to get that $200,000 paid salary, then forget about it. I was never going to go into the startup world.
Yeah, it's hard to walk away from that, right? And so sometimes you just got to take the leap, and that's really cool. Sounds like you're doing some really great work. So tell us now a little bit about how you've approached going about finding co-founders for some of your ventures in the past, because like you said, you have to get the right people. As Jim Collins said, you got to get the right people on the bus and sitting in the right seat if you want to find organizational success. And I think that's important for every employee, but it's particularly important for the founding team.
Exactly. I would say, first you got to measure what your next milestone is. Whether if you're most likely early stage if you're building a team, and so you got to measure what milestone you're trying to reach with that. Whether it's building out software, building out a business plan, or whatever it may be. So then you're ultimately looking for the person that's going to complement you. So whatever you're bad at and that you really need, that's what you need to hire ultimately. So if you're not an engineer, then you need a lead engineer. If you're not good at biz dev and putting together term sheets, understanding term sheets, or a pitch deck or a business plan, you really need to bring somebody in for that. The next stage you got to understand or break out is the value prop of each person that you're bringing in, because not everybody's equal. So if you start doing a 50-50 equal everybody, that's just not going to work. It's not a democracy. It is a business, and businesses really should be working as more of as a dictatorship. That's just the best way they work. Because if it's really equal, it creates a lot of conflict, and you're better going in the direction of, believe it or not, it's almost like you're almost better off going in the wrong direction fast with one person versus a battle going forward, because you pretty much end up in a stalemate and you don't move forward at all. Because then you fail quickly, and you pivot to the right thing. So yeah, I think, and then
can I just focus on zoom in on that point here for a moment? Now, certainly, business, you want to create an environment where people can speak up, they can be heard, you can have dissenting voices, where you can push back and challenge each other. But ultimately, you have the CEO who has to make a decision, and then you have to move in that direction, right? And
Exactly.
so what you're talking about, which is to the detriment of many organizations, is kind of this decision paralysis that can set in, where you're chasing consensus. That's never going to happen. So it doesn't mean you don't seek input, and it doesn't mean you don't challenge assumptions and push each other on your thinking. That has to happen. But ultimately, you make a decision, you move forward, and then you talked about failing fast. That is so important. Like, we just need to create an environment where we're iterating rapidly. So you fall forward, you fail fast, you learn from what worked and what didn't work, and then you iterate, you move forward, and then you refine your approach. But you don't want to allow, like, sometimes we get in perfectionist tendencies especially when we're launching a new product or service. We want it to just be perfect. And certainly we need to add value to the market, but nothing's perfect on the first try, right? And so it's, we're often flying the plane as we're building it, and we just, as long as you're iterating fast, then you find there's bugs. Okay, we got to fix those bugs. We're going to do a new rollout, move forward. Okay, pivot, iterate, move forward. And that's really what has to happen.
Exactly. And I would say most importantly too, is what dictates that drive is the customer feedback. Like, what you think or what any other person thinks is irrelevant. It's about your customer. You're basically solving their problem, their pain point, first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I apologize, I cut you off midstream, but you were talking about that founding team, getting people with complementary skill sets around the table with different expertise. And that can be a challenge for founders at times, because frankly, there's often a lot of ego involved with people who are in that space, who are very capable, very intelligent, highly skilled, technical skill, to be able to acknowledge your own personal gaps, and where, your skills take you this way, but you need to build out a complementary team with people with all these other areas of expertise. That can be a challenging thing sometimes for anybody, but for founders who are very capable, very intelligent, have been very successful. So what have you found? Like, how have you approached that? How have you kind of kept your own ego and your own how have you kept that in check and practice some intellectual humility around recognizing, how you need to fill out your team?
Exactly. I mean, you definitely have to measure their tone and the feel when you are interviewing people. And this is when you really go for your gut. First, you interview for competency, and then you go for the gut and company culture. Are you going to vibe well with this person? Can you have drinks and a dinner with them and hang out? You don't have to, them be your best friend, but can you really tolerate this human being for like the next 5 to 10 years? Can you really do that? And then what's most important, I would say, is I think truly how you get vibe in the connectivity. And then do you have a history? That also helps as well. And I think for me, when it comes to humility, for me, best idea wins. So I could care less who it came from. It's just, I'm going to measure, okay, cool. Is that going to work? Or I'll come up with an idea, and they'll say, Obi, there's a better way. This one's faster. It won't cost us anything, and we can implement it in like 2 days. Done. Run with it. And that's it. So for me, I would say, yeah, best idea wins is one of the top mantras on our company.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I think it takes a level of security in yourself, right? To have that kind of confidence and lean on your team that way, where where you're all in it together. You just want to grow and develop the organization and help you bring value to the market. And so just recognizing that the best ideas should win, that you don't have to play all these political games to try to, position something. Like, no, just really move forward, reward people for the great ideas they have, give credit where credit's due, genuine praise, and then just move forward quickly and on whatever that idea might be, and iterate. I think that's great.
Exactly. And I think most importantly for me personally is, my mission is to scale up, make money. Like I could care less, where ideas come from. It's just we need to make money or else we die.
Yeah, right. So I think that kind of leads into the next point of just general performance management. How do you deal with that? As an organization grows and scales and you have hundreds of employees, thousands of employees, you start to put in place very formal, processes and performance management initiatives and plans and all the things around that. What's been your approach when you have a small team, a small core group? You're hopefully developing trust, you're developing that relationship with each other, you're around each other all the time. What's been your approach to dealing with performance and managing that?
So there's definitely a detailed conversation on what people can achieve and in relation to how much revenue you're bringing in and how much runway you have as well. So you're kind of balancing all those elements. And then you really got to, for us, what we're measuring is, okay, here's what it's going to take to generate revenue. How do we get there? And then how much runway do we have to get there? And so at that point, that's what we kind of work backwards and say, okay, we need X amount of updates featured in this month and then that month, and you pretty much build out a schedule from there. And everybody understands that you're all in agreement of hitting these milestones as well. So when you have your monthly, not monthly, but weekly meetings, you're constantly doing checkups and updates to see if everybody's hitting their milestones and go from there. And I think at that most, and then even if you don't hit it, now whether you pivot or you make adjustments or bring people in, you got to do what it takes to kind of hit that next milestone.
Yeah. And so how do you approach it when people don't hit their milestone?
It is a tough conversation. You got it. Well, it's like, first question is why? What happened? Was it an unforetold bug that you didn't see? Was it did the software crash? Was it a failure in equipment? What was it? And from there, you kind of try to solve the problem from there, because it might not be their fault. It may have just been, look, bugs happen when, the original code that we got from such and such just was garbage. And so you just gotta, maybe potentially bring in additional help to hit that milestone.
Yeah. I like the approach to just have, openness, having those conversations on an ongoing basis, not throwing someone under the bus just because they didn't hit a milestone arbitrarily. Everyone likes to focus on their KPIs and they want to hit, those markers. But people, can't work magic. And so sometimes there are external pressures that just can't, you just have to account for them and you have to acknowledge them. And then you set out a plan and you move forward. And so when we can have that kind of a rich conversational environment where we just know we can touch base and talk about those things, I think that engenders more trust, and that engenders, more meaningful goals and work towards our continued development. I know for myself, I can think, in past experiences around performance issues, when I was the person, the employee, and I had, managers talking to me, if there was something that was completely out of my control, but they came down on me because I didn't hit some arbitrary benchmark, it wasn't motivating. It wasn't, it didn't help me do anything better. It just discouraged me. Right. And so we have to be able to walk that line. And I think as long as we have open communication and just regular dialogue around performance, then that can really get us to where we want to be.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's a problem solving a measure, and you got to tackle it like a complex math problem versus by no means is your startup going to be a well-oiled machine. So you are going to have hiccups, and you got to be ready for them.
Yeah. Excellent. Tell us a little bit more now about how you've approached the hiring process. You've talked a little bit about how you want to go out and identify, people to join the founding team. But how do you formally go through that process?
It's complex. I mean, you're first reaching out to your closest audience, or your closest, whether it be your investors or your employees, your friends. You're kind of going within that inner circle to find the closest group of people that that know experienced people for that role. And of course, you're doing a job description that will go out and go from there. Once that category is exhausted, then now you're getting on LinkedIn. At that point. Because as a startup, you can't afford to pay for these grandiose services that will charge you a significant amount of capital to go find people. So you really got to hit the ground, and whether it be AngelList or LinkedIn, to really reach out to those individuals, do a mini interview from there, and then get their resume, and then do that formal interview. And I would say that formal interview, like I said, is more competency first, and then do you fit company culture. Now, another step I've used for hiring engineers is I'll use a technical co-founder or technical advisor, and they'll actually do more of a deep dive into their competency and have them take multiple tests to go from there to make sure that they can actually achieve what we need to get done.
Yeah, I think that's good. And it is important to focus on competencies and capabilities, which is different than, I think, the traditional approach was, what's the formal education achieved, how many years of experience. And we had kind of these arbitrary formal benchmarks that we wanted people to meet. And it doesn't make much sense. It really just follows tradition. And that's the way it has always been. I think more and more companies are realizing that that's kind of silly. You don't care. I mean, who cares whether you got a master's degree in whatever from whatever university? If you have the skills, the competencies, and the capabilities to be able to do what needs to be done, then by all means, bring them on board. And to your point about fit, culture fit, I think is always important. Of course, we're not talking about hiring people that are just like us, because we don't want to create a groupthink environment where we're not challenging each other's thinking. We do want to get a diverse team together. We do want not only racial, ethnic, gender diversity. We want cognitive diversity. We want different ways of viewing things. We want different worldviews. We want that brought into the team. But you do have to be able to mesh together. You have to be able to work together. And you made the comment earlier, is this someone you can stand being around for 5 or 10 years? Absolutely. Especially in a startup, you're going to be spending such long hours, so closely intertwined. And it's got to be someone who can fit with the team, plain and simple.
Exactly. No, I mean, it's on a part of it kind of stems from my past working in animation and graphic design and illustration. I never looked at where they went to school. I went straight to their portfolio. That's what told me everything.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I wish more people would embrace that mentality. I always, it bothers, I'm a professor. I love academia. I love the university setting. But it's always bugged me when people are elitist and, who cares? Like, who cares what university you went to? Who cares? Like, what I care about is what you bring to the table, what you can do for the organization, how you can help the team. That should be the number one goal, not, which school you happen to go to or whatever. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so how about the firing process? So sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you've coached, you've mentored, you've had these performance discussions. You thought you got the right person in. For whatever reason, it just didn't work out. They're not responding to the coaching and the performance discussions. How have you approached the process of discipline and even getting to the point of firing and letting people go?
Key thing, do it fast. You definitely want, the minute you see there's a problem or they're not getting it or things aren't working out, you got to address it really quickly. And I generally kind of give you like one chance, because it's not it's not emotional. We got to hit our metrics or we're in trouble. So once it's not working out, you're out. I sit you down. I kind of go over the things that aren't working, And sometimes it's a cultural thing too, or a cultural fit. We just don't mesh together as well. But generally it's always performance. And look, this just isn't what we're looking for. We need X, Y, Z. And then just end it right there and then. Speed is it. Because the longer you leave them on, the more money you're spending and the more money you're losing as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You're losing the money directly, but you're also indirectly, there's impacts on the team, the dynamics of the team. One person's poor performance usually has extending impacts and ripple effects on people around them. It was interesting. I was having a discussion with a leader just earlier today, actually. And the question was, so this organization, they have someone who's really skilled, really talented, all the capabilities necessary, a good performer, but they just rubbed everyone the wrong way. Like everyone on the team, it was kind of a toxic environment, an unhealthy team dynamic. And so this leader was wondering, like, what do I do? Like, I don't want to lose this person. They're a really great performer, but it's not working. Like, what do I do? How would you respond to that?
Oh, they got to go. I mean, I think there's a whole report done on it. And they said, even if that person's really good, what ends up happening is they disrupt everything in the company, and you end up losing money on your ultimate goal as a company because this person has disrupted the whole flow of the whole industry. You're better off getting rid of them, bringing in someone even less qualified that's going to mesh well, and you'll move forward faster. Because at the end of the day, as a company, a lot of pieces have to work together well,
Yeah, well, we're in agreement. That's exactly what I said. And maybe it seems counterintuitive, but to your point, I mean, that the cohesion of the group is so vital. And if you're not working together well, the ripple effects and the downline effects and how it impacts the customers is likely going to be huge. And I would much rather have someone who's hungry, who's maybe a little bit fresh, a little naive, someone who doesn't really quite know what they're doing, but they're hungry and they're willing to work hard. I would much rather have a person like that with a lower skill level than someone who's not teachable, coachable, and just consistently causes problems. Right?
Exactly.
So, I get it. It can be painful. If I don't want to call out any like professional sports athlete, but if I have an all-star on my team and they're awesome, but they consistently are dysfunctional with all the team members, cut them loose, man.
Exactly.
Move on and rebuild the team, and you're going to be stronger for it. So
exactly.
Well, Obi, it has been a really great conversation with you. I want to be respectful of your time. I see we're coming towards the end of our time, but before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, how they can find out more about your companies and the work that you're doing, and then give us the last word on the topic for today.
Okay, cool. So yeah, like you could contact me. Our website is GetUnomi, GetUnomi.com. It's our site for our software company. We're also doing equity crowdfund, so you can find us on Micro Ventures and just look up Unomi or Get Unomi, and we're on there. And then you can also go to Pixelpart Studio, which is our animation studio, pixelpartstudio.com, and you'll see all the amazing work that we're working on. And yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, this is a great show, and happy to help entrepreneurs whenever possible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Obi. It has been a real pleasure. I appreciate all the experience, the insights you bring to the table and sharing with listeners. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected with Obi, find out more about what he and his companies can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.